Hey guys, tonight we march on Paris. It's barely dawn when you hear the first cannon blast. A low, rumbling boom that shakes the window panes and sets the pigeons flying like they've just remembered freedom. You bolt upright on your straw mattress, heart hammering like it's trying to get a head start on the revolution. Outside, someone is yelling "Vive la République" with more volume than conviction, and someone else is arguing loudly about who stole their wooden spoon. So, a normal morning in 1793. Paris? You fumble into your clothes, one shirt, one vest, one pair of pants with more patches than fabric. You tie on your red Liberty cap, which smells faintly of soup and possibly regret. Today, you're a revolutionary. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're joining the march from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your front door into a wave of sound and smell burnt oats, unwashed citizens, boiling laundry, and distant muskets. Children run barefoot through the mud, one with a tricolor pinned to his sleeve and another dragging a toy guillotine made of sticks. That one's name is probably Maximilian. You try to step around a puddle and fail. Your shoes are soaked. You are now 20% revolution and 80% sewer. Historians still argue whether the atmosphere of revolutionary Paris was genuinely energized or simply panicked in unison. Some diaries describe firelit crowds singing in harmony. Others mention mobs, mud, and melodrama every 7 minutes. Your fringe fact tonight: a baker's apprentice once led a neighborhood rally simply because he had the loudest voice and a fresh loaf, both rare commodities in a city on edge. You push through a group of citizens chanting slogans. They're waving signs, each with ink-smudged lettering and at least one incorrect Latin phrase. Someone hands you a pamphlet titled "Liberty or Death" with a gravy stain on the corner. You nod solemnly, mostly because they're watching. You hear the cannon again, closer this time. Today's march isn't optional. You're part of the cause now. You're expected to shout, to rage, to believe. Even if you're not entirely sure what day it is, you join the parade of threadbare idealists and weary radicals, all trudging toward the center of the storm, and you try not to trip on a cobblestone or history, because it turns out both are surprisingly uneven. You forgot the password. Citizen. You haven't made it a dozen steps into the Place du Carrousel before you're stopped by a young man in an oversized jacket and an underfed mustache. His tricolor sash is fraying, but the bayonet on his shoulder gleams like a warning. Halt! He shouts dramatically, like he's auditioning for a revolutionary opera. Password. You blink. Password you repeat, stalling for time like your brain might catch up. He nods slowly. The patriotic password. Citizen. Right. That password. The one that changes daily. The one they shouted at the end of yesterday's committee meeting while you were busy sneezing into your elbow and trying to decide if it was disrespectful to fall asleep while someone was denouncing their landlord. You gamble. Equality. He raises one eyebrow so high it enters another philosophical plane. You try again. Fraternity. Now both eyebrows are watching you like unpaid spies. Elbow soup. He scowls. Wrong. You smile too widely. Liberty. He sighs through his teeth like a leaky teapot and gestures toward the soldiers behind him. A crowd begins to slow down. Spectators. Now. You've become today's entertainment. He says, "You clearly weren't at the morning assembly." You mumble something about having to help an old sans-culotte across the street. He doesn't laugh. He points at your cap. Where'd you get that, you panic? Because you know this game. The wrong hat gets you accused of monarchism. The wrong fabric means you're hoarding luxuries. The wrong fold and you might as well shout, "Vive le roi," and start running. Historians still argue how standardized revolutionary passwords were. Some claim they were essential for rooting out spies and traitors. Others suggest they were just another tool to assert power and catch out the sleepy and the overwhelmed. Your fringe fact tonight. In May 1793, a man was imprisoned for 48 hours simply because he couldn't remember whether the correct password was Marat forever or Marat always. You remember, finally. It's death to the enemies of virtue. The guard squints. He waits. You add "quickly" and "bread for the poor." He pauses, then grins. Close enough. He waves you through. You exhale, but not too obviously. That would look suspicious. As you rejoin the march, someone pats you on the back and says, "You nearly got listed, friend." You nod. Because in Paris, 1793, forgetting can be fatal. And remembering. That's just another form of revolution. Your hat is a political statement. You don't notice the stares at first. Not until a little girl points at your head and whispers something to her mother, who immediately pulls her closer and crosses to the other side of the street like your hat might explode. You touch it instinctively. It's red, wool, frayed around the brim. The kind they call a bonnet rouge, worn proudly by the sans-culotte. The working class heroes of the revolution. You've worn it every day for a week, practically slept in it. But today, you realize it's too clean, too well-shaped, too symmetrical, which, in the current climate, reads suspiciously like bourgeois effort. You start to sweat. A man walking by sneers at you. "Nice bonnet," he says. "Did your tailor choose it for you?" You try to laugh, but it sounds like a cough swallowing a cry. Someone else murmurs, "Looks like it's never seen a breadline." You tug it down, try to scuff it against a wall, then remember that behavior looks guilty. So you leave it and keep walking, like your hat isn't threatening to reveal you. Historians still argue about the symbolism of revolutionary clothing. Some say red caps and rough coats were badges of honor. Others suggest fashion became surveillance that you had to wear just enough to show your loyalty, but not so much that you seemed to be trying too hard. Your fringe fact tonight? In 1793, one man was arrested for wearing a silk tricolor sash silk. A luxury because it made the revolution look too fancy. You consider switching to a dirty bandana. But that's what the cobblers wear, and you're definitely not a cobbler. You made that mistake once in a conversation and accidentally promised to fix someone's shoes. You're approached again. Another citizen. Another stare. "Are you from the Cordeliers?" You nod. They squint. You don't look Cordeliers. "What does that mean?" you ask. Stupidly. Means you still have shoelaces. You glance down. You do. Rookie mistake. Eliza, a woman you barely know but now trust with your life, sidles up beside you and mutters, "Tuck your laces in and scuff your cap." Quickly. You obey. No one questions Eliza. She smells like onions and certainty. You make it to the next street without further insult. You pass a man with an actual chamber pot on his head. He gets 3 cheers. You sigh, because you've learned something important in revolutionary Paris. Fashion isn't about flair, it's about camouflage. And your hat? It's a billboard. The bread line is a war zone. You spot it from 3 alleys away, a ripple in the crowd. A throng forming around the boulangerie like flies on a revolution-shaped jam tart. You quicken your pace, your boots squelching in mud, and what you pray is just mud. There's already shouting. Someone's waving a stub of a loaf like it's a trophy. Another is sobbing. A third is bleeding just a nose. But it's unclear if it was an accident or part of the local bartering system. You join the line, which isn't a line so much as an aggressive huddle powered by desperation and elbows. It smells like yeast, armpits, and entitlement. You keep your hands in your pockets to avoid looking like you're reaching for something unrevolutionary, like money. Someone shouts, "No aristocrats in the bread queue." Everyone looks around for powdered wigs. No one sees one. The mood relaxes, slightly, until a tall man pushes forward and declares, "I have a ration chit for 3. Everyone immediately hates him. You have nothing. No chit. No coin. No plan. Just hunger. Which, in Paris, 1793 is not unique. You edge forward. Someone elbows your ribs. Another steps on your foot. You manage to slide 3 inches closer to the door before a child tries to climb your back. The baker appears, holding 2 loaves like sacred relics. He doesn't speak. He just holds them up and lets the crowd make its own decisions. It does. Poorly. There's a push, a scramble. An elderly woman goes down, then pops back up with surprising energy and a baguette she clearly did not have before. Eliza materializes beside you again. She hands you a roll. You don't ask how she got it. She says, "Don't thank me. Just eat it fast before someone sees." You nod and chew. It's stale. Hard. Possibly from last week. Best meal you've had all month. Historians still argue about how organized food distribution really was during the Terror. Some say the ration system worked for those with connections. Others recall it as utter chaos, with prices soaring and black markets flourishing. Your fringe fact tonight. A Parisian baker was once imprisoned for baking loaves in the shape of royal crowns. He claimed it was an accident. He was guillotined for poor taste. You finish your roll and wipe your mouth with your sleeve. You're full relatively, but not safe. Because in this city, bread is political, and being seen eating that might mean someone else isn't. You're asked to denounce your aunt. It starts innocently enough. If anything, in 1793, Paris can be called innocent. You're still licking breadcrumbs from your fingers when a man in a patched coat and a suspiciously large feather in his cap sidles up to you. He smells like onions and self-importance. "Citizen," he says, too cheerfully. A moment you nod. Because saying no these days is legally adjacent to saying "I love the king." He pulls out a scrap of paper. "We're compiling neighborhood statements for the committee. Small matters, routine things, ensuring the public good. You recognize this for what it is, a trap." He glances at the page, then at you. "You reside on Rue du Coq." "You do." He nods, makes a mark. "And you're related to Madame Aubin." You hesitate. Because yes, Madame Aubin is your aunt. She's old, smells like lavender, and once expressed concern that guillotine blades were probably unsanitary. She also made you soup last winter, which technically makes her a national treasure. She is my aunt. Yes. The man nods again. Scribbles. Excellent. Now, has she ever, to your knowledge, spoken ill of the convention or complained about rationing or expressed nostalgia for furniture? You blink. Furniture. He leans in. There's a royalist trend involving armoires. Very subversive. You want to laugh, but you also want to keep your head. You say carefully, "She doesn't like soup without salt." He scribbles rapidly, "Thank you, citizen." He walks off. You're left standing there, stomach sinking faster than aristocratic popularity. Historians still argue how widespread civilian denouncements truly were. Some sources claim the practice was sporadic. Others argue that entire streets learned to speak in whispers to avoid appearing loyal to yesterday's regime. Your fringe fact tonight. A man was denounced by his own cousin for sneezing during the reading of a patriotic poem. He claimed it was allergies. The committee didn't believe in pollen. You trudge back toward your lodging, mentally cataloging every time your aunt used the word comfortable. Eliza finds you later and says, "You look pale." You say, "I think I just accused a relative of treason." She nods. Better her than you. You don't disagree. Because in Paris, 1793, blood may be thicker than water. But ink on paper, that gets you noticed. You get promoted by yelling loudest. There's a gathering at the corner of Rue Saint-Antoine, more of a pulsing clump than a crowd. A few dozen citizens packed tight, craning necks, fists raised, mouths already open in slogans. You edge in, hoping for news. Bread, or at the very least, less scrutiny than yesterday's hat incident. In the center, a man stands on a wine crate, waving a pamphlet and frothing at the edges. "We must purge the convention of moderates," he roars. "Too many lukewarm hearts will drown the fire of liberty." There's clapping, shouting. Someone throws a turnip. You clap too. Then, because everyone else is yelling, you do the same. Death to tyrants. It's loud, it's sharp, and unfortunately, it's a little too good. The man on the crate pauses, points at you. You there, you speak with passion. You freeze, mouth open. Partly from surprise, partly from that chunk of bread you haven't finished chewing. "Come up," he bellows. "Let your voice be heard." The crowd parts like suspicious soup. You are hoisted up before you can object. You're now standing on a wobbly crate with 40 revolution-hungry Parisians staring at you. Eliza, from the back, mouths don't say anything weird. You swallow and shout, "Liberty, equality, and free salt for the people." There is a pause, then wild applause. You are immediately handed a clipboard and a quill. You've been promoted to scribe of the Revolutionary Circle. Congratulations! Historians still argue how spontaneous revolutionary promotions were. Some say they were theatrical and frequent, driven by emotion and performance. Others suggest there was method behind the chaos. Loud voices were useful for crowds, and easy to dispose of if they got inconvenient. Your fringe fact tonight. In 1793, a man was appointed head of a neighborhood committee after shouting a poem about bread. He lasted 6 days before being denounced for rhyming republic with garlic. You're ushered into a nearby building and seated at a table where people begin dictating grievances. "He stole my onions." She looked at me like a monarchist. "That child is too clean." You write them all down. Your handwriting is messy, which makes it revolutionary. Later, Eliza says, "You know you're a target now." You nod. You know. But for the moment, you're fed. You're feared. And your shouting has earned you something rare. A job that pays in ink instead of bruises. The Club of Cordeliers wants your blood. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Literally your blood. You're summoned at dusk. A boy runs up, out of breath, and hands you a scrap of paper with smeared ink and your name spelled almost correctly. You're instructed to report to the Club of the Cordeliers at once for discussion alignment, and potential redirection of revolutionary spirit, which is just a poetic way of saying, get in here and prove you're still angry enough to belong. You follow the boy through winding streets, past shuttered stalls and suspicious cats. The Cordeliers Club looms like a haunted monastery, except instead of monks, it's full of fanatics with pens and emotional instability. Inside, it smells like wax, damp wool, and scorched pamphlets. You're seated in front of a semicircle of men and women in tricolor sashes and expressions carved from suspicion. A woman with intense eyebrows leans forward. You are seen smiling. You blink. Where? At a bakery. This morning. You fumble. Someone gave me bread. It wasn't political bread. It was just wheat. The room murmurs. The man beside her scarred cheek. Louder voice reads from a list. You failed to shout death to aristocrats during yesterday's rally. I had laryngitis. You lie. They frown. Then they ask you to speak. On liberty. For 3 minutes. You panic. You improvise. You quote Eliza's soup rant from last week. Throw in a reference to Rousseau, who you think was pro-people, and say fraternity 6 times in increasing volume. They clap. They nod. Someone offers you cider. Historians still argue whether revolutionary clubs like the Cordeliers were hotbeds of democratic energy or echo chambers of escalating extremism. Some call them incubators of popular will. Others describe them as performance venues with torches. Your fringe fact tonight? One man gave a bad speech at the Jacobin Club and was reassigned to sewer maintenance for insufficient fervor. After your speech, they ask one more thing. Who do you suspect? You pause because saying no one is suspicious. You give a name you barely remember from school. They nod. He'll be watched. You leave the club 2 hours later with a certificate of alignment and the growing suspicion you've just invented a future trial. Eliza's waiting outside. Did they like you? She asks. You show her the certificate. She squints. That's not a good thing. You nod. Because you're starting to understand in this city, attention isn't a reward, it's a forecast. And yours is looking stormy. Robespierre frowns at your sandwich. It's lunchtime, technically. Though time in revolutionary Paris is more of a suggestion than a schedule. And lunch is really just the window where you're least likely to be shouted at for chewing. You've got a piece of bread again. But this time it has something inside. A miraculous, mysterious slice of cheese that Eliza insists fell off a cart. You sit on the edge of a fountain dry, of course, and unwrap your revolutionary meal. Then you realize someone is watching you. Not just watching. Judging. He's seated nearby, pale, neatly dressed, eyes sharp enough to cut fabric. His jacket is modest but immaculate. His shoes are too clean for a man who walks the city. You know that face. Everyone does. Maximilien Robespierre, the incorruptible, architect of the terror, man who once gave a 5-hour speech on virtue and didn't blink once. He's looking at your sandwich like it offends him on a molecular level. You freeze mid-bite. He raises one eyebrow. You nod politely. Chew. Slowly. He leans toward you, voice soft and precise. Where did you acquire cheese? You panic. You almost say Eliza stole it, but Eliza would kill you faster than he would. So you say, from the market. With a ration chit, he studies you, silently, blinks, then says, we must all be vigilant. Citizen, indulgence is the mask of the counter-revolutionary. You nod as if that sentence made any sense. He stands. He leaves. You exhale so hard you lose a crumb. Historians still argue whether Robespierre was truly austere or merely theatrical. Some say he lived modestly and expected the same. Others claim he had secret stashes of cocoa and a mirror he addressed by name. Your fringe fact tonight. A man was arrested after Robespierre noticed him smiling during a civic festival. His charge: inappropriate levity. You wrap the rest of the sandwich. Eliza appears 10 minutes later and says, "You look pale. I was just interrogated by an eyebrow." She shrugs. Could have been worse. How you could have offered him a bite. You nod. She's right. And from now on, you eat your cheese in private. You are mistaken for a royalist. You're just trying to get home. It's been a long day of shouting, writing down other people's grievances, pretending your aunt doesn't exist, and nearly choking on revolutionary cheese. You deserve a nap. Or at least 5 minutes without being accused of something existential. So naturally, as you round the corner near Rue de la Ferronnerie, someone yells, "Royalist, you stop?" Slowly. Because when someone says royalist in 1793, Paris, it's not an insult. It's an accusation. Heads literally roll for less. You turn to see a man pointing at you. He's wearing a sash that may have once been white but is now the color of suspicious porridge. His boots are uneven. His pupils are enthusiastic. He marches over. Nice blue sash. Citizen. You blink. You look down. You realize that somehow, somewhere, a bit of your old satchel patched with royal blue has flopped out and is now draped across your chest like a bourbon souvenir. You try to tuck it in. Too late. The crowd is already forming. There is always a crowd. They smell drama, or blood, or both. Someone murmurs, "Looks like velvet." Another, "That's the king's color." Another, "He blinked too slowly." They do that. You raise your hands. "It's laundry dye. From my neighbor. He's a dyer. Very loyal. Hates kings. Loves guillotines." They don't laugh. You hear someone whisper, "Should we list him?" You panic. You do the only thing you can. You start singing the Marseillaise. Badly, off-key, too fast, then too slow. But loud, passionate, full of fear and bad pitch. It works. Sort of. Someone joins in. Then another. Now it's a sing-along. You belt out Aux armes citoyens like your life depends on it, because it does. Historians still argue how often mistaken identity led to arrests during the Revolution. Some say the chaos was exaggerated. Others point to records filled with names spelled wrong, descriptions based on hats, and witnesses who may have been deeply confused or deeply vindictive. Your fringe fact tonight. A man named Louis was arrested simply for being named Louis. He tried to change it to Jacques mid-trial. It didn't work. You finish the song. There is awkward silence. Someone mutters, "He's just bad at fashion." The tension breaks. They walk on. You sag against a wall and check your satchel. You rip the blue part off and throw it down a sewer grate. Eliza meets you 2 blocks later. Did you just sing to save your life? You nod. She shrugs. Better than poetry? People hate poetry. You breathe out, one breath, then another. Then quietly begin humming the anthem again. Because sometimes survival is about being louder than suspicion. Your name is spelled slightly incorrectly. You're finally home, or whatever passes for home, when you rent half a floorboard above a candle shop and share your ceiling with 3 mice and a suspiciously judgmental spider. You sit down, you take off your shoes, you breathe for maybe 5 seconds. Then there's a knock at the door. Not a friendly knock. Not a Here's a warm bowl of soup knock. A paperwork knock. You open it to find a man in gray, holding a folder. Eyes like lukewarm soup and disposition to match. Citizen, he says, glancing at the paper. Giraud. You shake your head. Giroux. He squints. Giraud. No Giroux. With an X. He flips a page. This says Giraud. It's you. You correct him again. He frowns. You live here? You nod. He looks skeptical. Close enough. You've been listed. Your stomach drops faster than your last coin through a floorboard crack. Listed for what you ask? He shrugs. We don't decide that. The committee does. You're scheduled for review on Thursday. You try to explain the mistake. The spelling. The fact that Giraud is the bread thief from across the alley? Not you. He stares at you blankly, makes a mark, walks away. Historians still argue how many revolutionary tribunal cases were based on mistaken identity. Some insist it was rare. Others point to cases where entire wrong families were brought in and nobody noticed until afterward. Your fringe fact tonight. A man spent 3 weeks in prison for confusing the word republic with republicanism in a speech. The transcriptionist added flourishes. The committee called it betrayal. You slam the door, gently, just in case it echoes. You sit back down and try to think. But mostly you listen. To every footstep outside, at every creak in the stair, every flutter of official parchment. Because your name is now on a list, even if it's spelled wrong. And in Paris. 1793? Spelling doesn't save you. Silence might. You witness a revolutionary trial. It's fast. The summons arrives folded, wrinkled, and ominously blank on the back. Eliza reads it over your shoulder, chewing on a carrot and murmuring, "You're not on trial, just attending." For now. You don't ask what for now means. You walk to the tribunal building just after dawn. It looms over the street like an accusation carved in stone. Above the doors, a fading banner reads, "Liberty, Equality, Fraternity," though someone has scratched in, or else inside. It smells like candle wax, damp wool, and anticipation. The trial room is packed. Rows of chairs creak under the weight of citizens, judges, and suspicion. You sit beside a man who mutters revolutionary slogans in his sleep. The woman behind you is knitting something vaguely threatening. The accused is already at the front, a baker named Delon, who allegedly overcharged for rye and wore clean shoes on a Wednesday. He stands straight, dignified, a little confused. He is very clearly doomed. The judge is already reading aloud Citizen Delon. You are charged with hoarding, profiteering, and having an expression inconsistent with revolutionary enthusiasm. Delon opens his mouth. The judge raises a hand. You will speak when guilt has been established. You blink. That was fast. Witnesses are called. One says she saw him looking smug near Flower. Another says he wore cuffs with lace. Delon starts to protest. He is interrupted by a bell. The jury votes without speaking. All hands rise. Guilty. Execution tomorrow. Trial time 7 minutes. 12 seconds. No one cheers. Everyone just gets up and walks out like this was expected. Like it's lunch. Like it's Tuesday. Eliza meets you in the corridor. "How was your first?" she asks. You don't answer. She shrugs. "I cried after mine too. It's normal." Historians still argue whether the tribunals were meant to deliver justice or simply reinforce fear. Some describe them as tools for cleansing the state. Others call them theater with real blood. Your fringe fact tonight? A juror once admitted he voted guilty just to get home before curfew. The man's hair offended me. He added, "You walk home in silence. Every boot scrape sounds like a verdict. Every doorway hides a witness. And you now understand justice doesn't arrive here. It pounces. Your shoe buckle is too fancy. It happens mid-step. You're walking just walking, trying to be invisible. Which is hard when you've got a head full of revolutionary slogans and a stomach full of fear bread. The street is muddy. The sky is sulking. You're halfway to your next committee meeting when a boy points at your foot and yells, 'Aristo shoes, you stop.' Everyone else doesn't. They stop too. Instant crowd. It's like revolutionary Paris has a sixth sense for trouble in progress. A woman leans in to get a better look. Those buckles shine too much. You lift your foot. They're just buckles. Metal. Worn. You've had them for years. But the left one still catches the sun. And now you are a walking class symbol. A man in a butcher's apron covered in something suspiciously red crosses his arms. You know who else wore shiny buckles. You say nothing. He nods like that's an admission. Elites, courtiers, shoe peacocks. You want to shout. They came with the shoes, but instead, you say, "I can scuff them." Too late. A patrol officer appears. You don't even see where he comes from. Just appears, as if summoned by the shine. Problem. Citizens. Everyone points. The buckles. The officer squints, then pulls out a knife. Not to arrest you. To scrape your shoes. Right there. In the street. Metal against metal. Grime over shine. You are now less threatening, he declares. He walks off. The crowd disperses. You stand there, mildly buckled and extremely humiliated. Historians still argue how fashion policing played into the psychology of the terror. Some say it was performance, meant to erase class boundaries. Others argue it was paranoia with a tailor. Your fringe fact tonight. A woman was arrested for wearing earrings shaped like teardrops. The committee found them symbolically counter-revolutionary. Later, Eliza sees your scuffed shoes. She says, "Fashionable today. Guillotine tomorrow." You nod and begin planning how to make everything you wear look like it's been chewed by liberty itself. Because in Paris, 1793, the wrong accessory isn't a fashion faux pas. It's a confession. You're recruited to write slogans. It starts with a chalkboard. You're just passing through the Place du Marché, minding your own business, trying to look as dull and unarrestable as possible. When a man in spectacles waves you over, you there. You've got a nice scream face. You pause. He clarifies, "I saw you at the rally last week." Good voice. Veins in the neck. Very convincing. Do you write? You say, sort of. He hands you a stick of chalk. You do now. And just like that, you're conscripted into the public messaging subcommittee. Your job, right inspiring, terrifying. Loyalty enforcing slogans on walls, carts, bakery shutters, and once a goat. The first day, you scrawl liberty or death on a fence post. Someone complains it's too obvious. So you try the Republic never sleeps. Too creepy. Then behead tyranny, too aggressive. Finally, you land on bread and blood. Two things we need. It gets applause. Eliza walks by, reads it, and mutters, "You're going to get me executed with a pun." You grin. You start making them rhyme. You start experimenting with exclamation points. You try not to think about the man you saw yesterday cleaning slogans off a wall he was escorted away mid-scrub. Historians still argue whether revolutionary slogans were genuinely influential or just graffiti in formal wear. Some credit them with building collective identity. Others argue they were just stress relief with ink. Your fringe fact tonight: a child once drew a stick figure wearing a crown and was accused of monarchist propaganda. His defense: it was supposed to be a potato. One afternoon, your supervisor says, "You're good." Too good. You freeze. That's never a compliment here. Ever consider writing for the tribunal? You pretend to choke on chalk dust. Eliza later tells you, if they ask you to write oaths, say yes. If they ask you to write names, run. You nod. You spend the next morning writing "Virtue is revolutionary hygiene" on an outhouse. And you wonder when exactly you went from scribbling jokes in the margins of pamphlets to painting moral authority on pigs. Because now your handwriting is a weapon, and it's aiming both ways. The guillotine blocks your shortcut home. It's late. The kind of late where the sky turns a greasy gray and your legs feel like they're made of half-melted wax. You're heading home with ink-stained fingers and the faint smell of chalk, and fear still clinging to your sleeves. You decide to take the short path through the Place de la Révolution. A mistake. You round the corner and there it is, tall, red-stained, and recently wiped. The guillotine. Up close, it looks less like an instrument of justice and more like an overachieving scarecrow designed by someone who'd recently lost a bet with morality. It's not in use at this moment, but it's never quite off duty either. A small crowd is gathered, whispering with the reverence usually reserved for churches and especially juicy gossip. You try to walk around them quietly. Quickly, but you accidentally step in something you really hope is wine. A young boy points at you. That's the writer. You freeze. He points again. You wrote "no loaf without law" in the bakery. People nod. Murmurs ripple. You try to smile. It doesn't land. A man near the scaffold grins at you wide, red-gummed, enthusiastic in a way that feels very temporary. He says, "Want to see it in action? They're starting early tomorrow." You shake your head. He shrugs. Suit yourself. Seats go fast. You edge around the scaffold. Its wood groans slightly as if remembering recent appointments. Historians still argue whether Parisians attended executions out of political fervor or morbid habit. Some accounts describe cheering crowds. Others recall bored vendors selling lemonade while heads rolled. Your fringe fact tonight: a woman was arrested for knitting too loudly during an execution. The official reason: improper rhythm. Eliza appears as you pass the scaffold. You took the guillotine route again. She asks, "It was shorter." You say that like time is your friend. You both walk in silence for a few blocks. Until you whisper, "Do you think they remember names?" She replies, "They remember hats. That's enough." You nod and don't look back. Because in Paris, 1793, the guillotine isn't a punishment. It's a presence. And today, it let you pass. Your neighbor disappears mid-sentence. It's the middle of the night when you hear the knock. Not your door is. Monsieur Caron. Third floor. Wears mismatched socks. Once gave you a carrot in solidarity. He's been fixing the same chair for 3 weeks, mostly just sanding it while ranting about supply chains and cheese quality. You hear the knock. Then the door creak. Then a low voice. Then silence. You roll over in your cot, heart ticking a little faster. You tell yourself it's just paranoia. Just the committee doing a spot check for bourgeois furniture or excessive peace. The next morning, Karen is gone. His door is open. His sanding rag is still hanging on the chair like he planned to return in 3 minutes. He was halfway through a sentence last night. You remember because he was standing in the stairwell, holding a half-peeled potato and saying, "The thing about Rousseau is," and then today, just empty air. Eliza finds you poking your head through his doorway. She squints. What did he say about Rousseau? I don't know. He never finished. She nods. Add it to the list. What list? The list of unfinished thoughts. You don't ask how long the list is. You return to your room. You sit very still. You don't speak for an hour, not because you have nothing to say, but because you're afraid to leave thoughts half-baked. Historians still argue how many people were taken in the night by neighborhood denunciation versus official charges. Some say the records were detailed. Others believe a significant portion simply vanished into paperwork and misunderstood metaphors. Your fringe fact tonight. A man was reported for acting suspiciously during silence. His crime: thinking too hard near a bakery. That evening, you walk to the market. The seat where Karen used to sit is occupied by a sack of onions. No one mentions him. The potato he peeled is still on the ledge, half peeled. Like the sentence, like the man, like everyone here, eventually, you hum quietly on the walk home. Nothing patriotic, nothing rhymed, just noise. To remind yourself you're still audible. You're assigned to guard cheese. It's not glamorous. In fact, it might be the least glamorous duty in the entire revolutionary machine, which, let's be honest, is already operating on a spectrum that includes empty bucket and weird torch guy. You're standing outside a storeroom with a dull pike in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Your mission guard 4 wheels of confiscated cheese that are suspected of being counter-revolutionary assets. Yes, that's what it says on the form Dairy-Based Economic Sabotage. Apparently, someone important believes the merchant who owned these wheels was hoarding brie for future monarchist celebrations. You don't know how brie factors into political treason, but you don't ask questions anymore, not since you saw someone get interrogated for humming the wrong lullaby. So here you are, standing, watching cheese. It smells incredible, which is unfortunate, because it's been 6 hours, and you are extremely hungry, and your job is to not touch the revolutionary cheese. You pace. You read the label again. Property of the Republic. Do not sample. Do not sniff. Do not wedge. Someone passes by and asks what you're guarding. You say evidence. They nod solemnly, assuming it's something explosive or encrypted. You don't correct them. Eliza finds you at hour 7. She raises an eyebrow. Dairy watchdog now. You grunt, counter-revolutionary cheese. She picks up a wheel and squints. This one looks guilty. Put it down. She puts it down. Slowly. Historians still argue whether confiscation of foodstuffs was primarily about justice or optics. Some say it was about controlling supply. Others point out the absurd number of reports involving butter, sausages, and aristocratic apricots. Your fringe fact tonight. A man was accused of royalist sympathy for storing Swiss cheese, since it had too many holes in its loyalty. At sunset, a man arrives to collect the cheese. He has a sash, a signature, and no sense of humor. He counts each wheel, signs your form, walks away with your post-dawn hallucination of a meal. You're left with an empty crate and a very loud stomach. Eliza offers you a carrot. Again, you take it, and try not to imagine it wrapped in brie. Because here in Paris, 1793, even cheese can commit treason. You are encouraged to betray yourself. It begins with a smile. You're summoned again to a local citizen self-review assembly, which sounds friendly enough, like a book club or a polite inquisition. Eliza mutters, "Don't smile too much." Or at all. You ask, why? She replies, "Happy people are hiding something." Noted. You enter the hall, a former tavern turned forum turned possible holding cell. A long table stretches across the front, behind which sit 3 committee delegates and a man with at least 7 pens. One of them motions you forward. You're handed a form. It's titled Personal Revolutionary Conduct Assessment and Rectification of Inner Contradictions. It has 30 questions. The first one asks, have you ever had a non-revolutionary thought? The second, have you failed to report someone else's non-revolutionary thoughts? The third, have you reported yourself for the previous 2 questions? Your pen hovers. A woman next to you begins crying while checking yes to question 5. Have you ever dreamed of bread in excess? You try to stay calm. But by question 11, do you still experience personal ambition? You begin to sweat into. By 17, are you willing to change your face if requested? You consider fleeing? But that would look suspicious. So you do what everyone else does. Confess vaguely. You check boxes. You leave open-ended answers like, I am working on my inner clarity and I sometimes think about soup more than justice. At the end, you're instructed to read your responses aloud. In front of everyone. You do. Someone claps. You're marked introspectively compliant, whatever that means. Historians still argue whether these self-assessments were meant to cleanse or control. Some describe them as catharsis. Others call them pre-written confessions folded into state bureaucracy like origami of guilt. Your fringe fact tonight. A man was applauded for writing 12 pages of self-denunciation in rhyming couplets. He was executed 3 days later for literary excess. You leave the hall dazed. Eliza catches up. What did you write for question 23? Which one was that? If you were yourself, would you report yourself? You pause, then say, I think I said, only on weekdays. She nods. Smart. Because in Paris, 1793, self-awareness isn't a virtue. It's insurance. And now you've filed the paperwork on yourself. Someone sings the Marseillaise off-key. You're at a neighborhood rally. Again, this one is themed Unity through Volume, which basically means 100 citizens in identical damp coats have gathered in a square to yell in the same direction. There's a small stage. There are pamphlets. Someone's waving a flag that looks more like a bedsheet dipped in enthusiasm. Then the music starts. A man with wild hair, a righteous scowl, and a violin that's seen better centuries strikes up the opening chords of the Marseillaise. Everyone joins in. You do too. Because not singing would be suspicious. Singing too well would also be suspicious. You aim for enthusiastic mumbling, but then disaster. 3 lines in, someone behind you belts out a note that doesn't just miss the melody, it violates it. It shatters it. It suplexes it into the cobblestones. Heads turn. The note continues. Warbling. Off pitch. Loud. A woman nearby mutters. That's treason in G minor. The singer a boy. Maybe 12 smiles proudly. He thinks he's participating. 2 committee members exchange glances. Someone writes something down. The song continues. You sing a little louder to drown it out. It doesn't help. After the final verse delivered, mercifully, in a key closer to human, there's a pause. Then clapping. Then the boy is escorted away. Politely, but firmly. You don't see him again. Eliza leans over. He was off by half a note. You whisper, he's 12? She shrugs. So was the Republic once. Historians still argue whether musical errors were grounds for suspicion or simply unfortunate noise. Some reports claim committee members used music as a loyalty test. Others describe cases where poor rhythm was interpreted as ideological hesitation. Your fringe fact tonight. A trumpeter was arrested for playing a major chord during a funeral procession. His defense: I thought we needed hope. Verdict: excessive optimism. That night, you practice humming in your room. Just in case. One verse, then another. Not too loud. Not too soft. Just enough to be heard and never misunderstood. Because in Paris, 1793, you don't have to say the wrong thing to get in trouble. You just have to sing it. You're given a medal and a warning. It's midday and raining slightly, which makes it a quiet day in Paris, if you define quiet as no one's been publicly accused in the last 2 hours. You're wiping chalk dust off your sleeves when someone shouts your name. Loudly. Clearly, Uktas. Not a great sign. A courier in a patchy uniform and with boots too clean for comfort approaches with a scroll and a grin that says, I'm not in trouble yet. He hands it to you, then salutes like this is a cartoon and walks off. You unroll the parchment. It's official. Stamped. Signed. Smelling faintly of wet ink and misplaced confidence. You've been commended. Apparently your slogan, "Liberty is not optional," was seen by a traveling member of the Paris Sectional Committee. They liked it. Or maybe they were too tired to find it suspicious. Either way, you're now recognized for civic messaging excellence. There's even a medal. It's made of tin and ribbon. You pin it on because you have no choice. Everyone claps, except Eliza. Eliza stares. You've been marked, she says. I've been honored. You correct her? She shakes her head. Same thing. Because recognition in 1793, Paris isn't reward, it's surveillance with confetti. You're now visible, tracked. A symbol. Which means you're expected to be perfect and possibly useful. Already. Someone asks you to attend a committee pre-meeting pre-discussion. Someone else wants help drafting a denunciation with poetic meter. You nod. You can't say no. Not now. Historians still argue whether revolutionary honors were morale boosters or just an efficient way to label potential threats. Some recipients vanished within weeks. Others were rearrested for letting praise spoil vigilance. Your fringe fact tonight. A woman received a medal for sewing tricolor dresses, then was investigated for owning too much thread. You tuck the scroll in your pocket. You think about hiding the medal, but someone already saw it. Eliza walks with you the long way home. You should write something bad next, she says. Mediocre, harmless. You nod, but you know you won't, because now your chalk is loaded, and the medal on your chest, it's not a shield. It's a target. You sleep with one eye open. You made it. Somehow, through speeches and slogans, bread riots and self-denunciations, patriotic interrogations and treasonous cheese duty, you're home again barely. Your boots are damp. Your hands are ink-stained. Your nerves are like twine that's been pulled through too many meetings. It's late. The city hums low, the way it always does when everyone's exhausted, but no one feels safe enough to rest. Your window rattles slightly with each gust of wind. Or maybe that's someone knocking. You double-check the door. Twice. Your cot creaks like it's been subpoenaed. You lie down anyway, because being vertical feels like a luxury. And sleep. When it comes, comes like a thief, shifty and guilty and ready to bolt. Your metal glints faintly in the dark. You hang it on a nail. Let it stare back at you. Let it glare if it wants. You're too tired to blink first. The room smells like wax, fear, and laundry that never really dried. You try to sleep. But every floorboard creak sounds like boots. Every cart rolling down the alley sounds like a wagon for prisoners. Every sudden silence is louder than sound. Historians still argue how many revolutionaries truly believed they were safe. Some say those closest to the center of power were the most anxious. Others insist that after a while, everyone learned to sleep in pieces like letters sent to the wrong address. Your fringe fact tonight: a man once asked to be guillotined first in line just so he wouldn't have to wait anymore. The tribunal obliged. Eliza told you earlier. The trick is to dream in slogans. That way, if you talk in your sleep, it still counts as loyalty. You try. You dream of bread, of ink, of words that rhyme with liberty and don't get anyone arrested. Outside, the city breathes heavy. Inside, you finally drift slowly, carefully, one eye open, just in case your dreams are being watched too. Now, rest. Let the streets of 1793 Paris fade to whispers behind you. Let the chants, the clatter of cobblestones, the scrape of chalk on stone walls all drift into the distance, like echoes in a dream you're no longer part of. You don't have to shout now. No more forms to sign. No boots at your door. No one weighing your hat for hidden monarchist tendencies. Just quiet. Just dark. The kind that holds you like a blanket. Not a cell. Let your breath settle. Slow and steady. Let your muscles loosen from the posture of always being ready. Ready to nod. Ready to denounce. Ready to run. Not tonight. Tonight. The slogans are all silenced. The banners folded. The crowd gone home. You are not a name on a list right now. You are not a speech waiting to be revised. You are simply here. Still. Safe for now. Let the rain on the shutters become your lullaby. Let the creaking boards just be wood, not footsteps. Let the silence stretch, not with tension, but with peace. No one is watching. No one is writing. And you are no longer performing. You've survived the day, and that's enough. You can close both eyes now. Really. Let the revolution sleep without you. Just for a little while. Let go. Let go. Let go.